What's classy if you're physically attractive, but trashy if you're not? It pains me to say it, but smoking. Those 1940s Hollywood noir film actresses looked so sultry with a cigarette. Plump and ugly with a cigarette is more reminiscent of a Walmart smoke break for some reason. It helps if you have perfectly coiffed hair as well. All smooth, not a strand out of place, and possibly gloves. It's not a dependency if she's wearing gloves, it's just a bad habit you can kick anytime. It's only touching her lips, not her fingers. She's not getting her fingers dirty. She's just getting intimate with passing, for it only touches her lips. It reminds her of her mortality, and thus it reminds you of her mortality and how one day she'll be old and pass away and no longer as beautiful as she is now. And oh, how beautiful she is with that beautifully coiffed hair. Not an ash flicked into it. The first incarnation of an on-screen manic pixie dream girl. There's a quote from someone that goes, "Smoking isn't cool, but it doesn't help that a lot of cool people smoke. Cigars too, but in this case a suit or tuxedo helps." My now late maternal grandfather has never, to my knowledge, or my mother's knowledge, smoked a cigarette in his life. Yeah, we have a professional picture taken in a photography studio of him in a perfectly fitting suit holding a cigarette. Without the cigarette, the picture would have been very different and definitely not as good as it is. Cigarette producers were very clever in the way they projected this cool image of smoking in people's minds. You know, the easiest way to tell a smoker is just trying to recreate the coolness ritual they've been implanted with. They toss their cigarette butts everywhere, like on the street. You probably wouldn't think of just tossing your empty Starbucks cup in the street when you knew people were watching you. You realize how that would make you look. But you have to toss your cigarette butt like you don't give a damn. Because that's the cool ritual you've been programmed to want to reenact. Because you do give a damn. I used to think it's cool, but I've known a lot of people who've had lung cancers throughout the years, so no thanks. Story 2. The plot of almost all romance movies. I like to use what I call the DeVito rule. If a romance movie becomes a horror movie by recasting the lead man as Danny DeVito, it's a crappy example of a romance movie. If it's still a sweet movie, it's really romance. Not many movies pass this test. Also, not usually classified as such, but The Addams Family. That's one of the best relationships on film. And usually the passing ones are romantic movies where the guy's a prick and then learns to stop being such a jerk. Like Shallow Hal or As Good as It Gets. I'm struggling to come up with any recent ones, as DeVito and A Change of Music make 50 Shades series or Passengers into terrifying horror movies. Back to the ones that passed, I haven't kept much of a list. I mostly use that test as a defense of why I generally dislike the genre. I know a lot of people would ask, so I think I might actually need to make a list. Out of the movies I've seen this year, Yuki Onna, the Snow Woman from Japan, passed I Don't Feel at Home in This World Anymore, arguably not a romance, and Warm Bodies. Out of the 56 movies I've seen this year, those are the only ones to qualify. If you extend beyond pure romance and accept romance B-plots, Baby Driver's romance isn't creepy. I'd love it if people would share other movies that qualify. If I can get a list going, I'll make a Tumblr page or YouTube video or something. Story 3. When you're attractive, it's being flirtatious, but when you're ugly, it's called being a creep instead. Honestly, the way that is phrased is misleading. It's not cause and effect. It's more that being a creep is forgivable if you're attractive. Flirting is about gauging interest. Creepiness means not noticing when someone is not interested. If you're attractive, people can still not be interested, or your approach can be too brutal without properly gauging interest first. That's, "Hey cutie, where you from?" versus, "This one's on me." Insert vulgar comment here. The thing about being attractive is that even if you make a mistake, the other person is often still interested despite that. No, it's not going to lead to anything, but if you want casuals, you really don't have to meet any kind of standard beyond being intimately attractive to the other person. The song and dance is irrelevant if the interest is already there. It's just that the song and dance is used for both parties to indicate that interest, or lack thereof, to each other, and perhaps create interest that wasn't there before if your plumage is particularly shiny or if you have a nice pattern around your waist area. Surely there's a difference between creepy behavior and outright dirtbag or jerkish behavior, though. I always thought the archetypal creepy behavior was like hovering near you at the bar, giving you those long, excruciating looks, generally being lecherous and so on, more so associated with having very poor social skills. Dirtbag behavior, on the other hand, being along the lines of outright offensive comments or outlandishly inflated egos. Creepiness is still flirtatiousness. It's just that it's tactless and rude, since you don't actually know if the other person is interested and never bothered to find out. If you get lucky and they were interested, it's flirting. Speed dating 101. And like every other privilege, beauty privilege for both genders, doesn't happen 100% of the time, but more often than not. And for those times where it does not happen to apply, people who are used to those privileges tend to have outbursts. I feel like emotional intelligence in general is already game, you know? You don't have to be attractive. Story 4. Being straightforward on Tinder. Can confirm. I say absolutely ridiculous stuff to girls on Tinder because I find it hard to take it seriously. But a lot of times they're into it. When the two not-so-good-looking guys try this, hilarity ensues. 4 out of 6 guys in the house can pull it off. Example of an extremely stupid line that has worked. Hey, you're not a paleontologist, are you? No? Why? Because I have a very big bone for you to discover. Works 60% of the time. Every time. One of my best friends is a tall, ripped fitness model who lucked out and got 10 out of 10 face and hair genetics. He'll constantly advise younger guys to just be yourself, which is toxic nonsense. Go ahead and just be yourself if you're a literal 10 out of 10 model. You can say or do anything and get Tinder drabs all day. For most people, who they are naturally is entirely mediocre and they should focus on self-improvement, rather than deciding to embrace that mediocrity. Story 5. Getting out of a small car. Whether it's a Porsche or a Fiat, if you're attractive, you look natural and desirable stepping out. If you're ugly or large, you look like one of those last clowns falling out of a clown car. When I was about 20, a friend of mine bought a Lotus Elise. At the time, I was about 230 pounds, broad-shouldered and just starting to lose my high school football build. I barely fit. He couldn't even take me for a ride because my legs were too tight against the center console and shoulders encroached on his seat. I used to have a picture of me and my buddy Tony, a 300-pound black guy, both sitting in that car. Said friend was about 5'5", 130 pounds, soaking wet. He popped out of that car cool as could be. I rolled out of the car looking like a buzzed moron. Also, my brother used to work at a Lexus dealership that would sometimes put other cars on the lot. He sold a Miata hardtop convertible to a little 4'6" old Einstein-looking guy. He was 6 foot and a big dude. He looked like a monkey hoisting a football smashed up against the steering wheel, jammed in a tiny cab with his old man sidekick. But on the other hand, if you get out of something big, you're equally judged, especially if you're not super attractive. You've got to be compensating. I'm 5'8" and a pretty average guy, if for no other fact that I'm in the Marines, and have a big Jeep as a daily driver. Off-roading is my hobby and my Jeep is built for it, MPGs. But some of the looks I get when I'm sitting at a red light. Story 6. Here's a few. Number 1. Winking. This brought back a hella weird memory for some guy winking at me in a mattress store. I don't know. A really self-aware, neutral, ugly person can pull off a wink better than a better-looking person, in my opinion. And there's no better place to act like a creep than in a mattress store. Jeez. Number 2. Messy hair. Actual messy hair looks pretty bad on really anyone. But if it is just messy enough to look like it's not styled, it can look good. Probably depends on the hair type too. Straight hair is always going to not look great if it's messy. However, I have very curly hair and pretty much let my hair do its own thing and it looks pretty decent most of the time. It's either a cute bedhead or a sign of depression and bad hygiene. People think. Number 3. The entire plot of 50 Shades. This honestly reminds me of a meme I saw a while back. It went something like, 50 Shades is only romantic because he's a billionaire. If he was living in a trailer, it would be a Criminal Minds episode. I don't know if mere attractiveness will cut it as far as that plot goes. Number 4. Basically any bold move towards the opposite gender. Some girl posted something that I read a while back about how some guy at the gym approached her to compliment her. She said that at first she thought he was a creep, but after taking a good look at him, she was totally okay with it because she found him kinda cute. You should have seen the amount of negative replies she received. She was basically saying that if a guy isn't attractive but still flirts with a girl, it automatically makes him a creep. It's mean, but yet it is many people's first thought in that scenario. While it frustrates me, and I definitely know there's a million exceptions, I can at least understand the mindset. If some attractive guy is doing it, you can more safely assume he's more than capable of getting it whenever he wants. So therefore, if he's going to those lengths for you, he must really be into you. Whereas where an ugly guy does it, it's safe to assume he's probably coming from a more desperate place. Kinda cute equals initiative, kinda ugly equals desperation. Anyway, enjoying the video so far? Please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, so you wouldn't miss out on any of my upcoming videos. Story 7. Sending a drink to a random woman across the bar. Many shifts as a bartender, and when a less than good-looking bloke wanted to do it, I said it was against policy to. I've never seen it end well unless the dude was really handsome. I was on a double date 3+ years ago. The other guy and I left the girls at the bar to play a round of arcade games. As we're playing, 3 guys walk in and see 2 apparently single women sitting at the bar. They order 5 shots of tequila and tell the bartender to leave it with the girls. I assumed they were planning on walking over as soon as the girls got the tequila, taking shots with them, looking all cool and desirable. Except, me and the other guy got back to the bar as soon as the shots arrived. The bartender didn't specify where they came from, so we each took a shot. Gave the 5th to the bartender and thanked him. He said, "Don't thank me, it's on those guys." And we looked behind him to see the 3 amigos looking like kids who just had recess canceled. Tried thanking them on the way out, but they just smiled sadly and nodded. I still feel bad about it to this day. But anyway, it's cringy no matter what. If you want to buy a woman a drink, go strike up a conversation. When her drink is empty, ask her if you can buy her another. It's simple. In my decade plus behind the bar, I never saw the gentleman over there would like to buy you a drink thing work, ever. I did see a lot of women go home with guys who they met and had a fun, genuine conversation with. Story 8. Hanging out with ugly people. It's so true. If you're attractive and hang out with ugly people, you just look like a well-rounded individual who's open to all types of company, including the uglies. Somebody once accused me of being friends with less attractive or heavier girls to make myself look better. I just like these particular women's personalities more. Their looks have nothing to do with it. There are plenty of ugly people I don't want to spend time with. It's absurd to make friends based on what other people will think. I was on the cusp of the D&D or magic type scene, played 40k, and you should see what happens to a guy or girl who's normally, say, a 5 out of 10 in that scene. They get swarmed on big time, especially the girls. Although weirdly, you can be too attractive. If someone is a 7 over 10 plus, there will be instant suspicion of why they're there. I stopped playing Magic because every time I went, they would put my chair behind my exes and say, "That's where the cheerleaders sit." They made fun of me when I'd move my chair to the table and pull my deck out of my purse or asked if I knew what I was doing, why I was there, etc. Thank God my current boyfriend already knew cool people who wanted to play D&D, or I couldn't do that either. They say hanging out with ugly people makes you look more attractive, but I think it's a bit more complicated than that. The halo effect is real. I think if hanging out with one other person, it's best if they're ugly. If with 4+ people, you look better if they're all very good looking. The uglies? Excuse me? Story 9. Trench coats and or fedoras, at least to some extent. They've been ruined by neckbeards these days, but they have historically looked cool and attractive gentlemen. Trench coats lost popularity among men because their utilitarian nature is no longer needed. Cars and quick travel replace the need for protective all-day clothing with lots of pockets. But women will absolutely deal with unnecessary things in lieu of aesthetics. They're impractical in most of the country. They're great if you live in a city and travel via mass transit. They keep you warm and your clothes protected, and they have pockets and other features that make them very utilitarian. If you happen to have and use a car though, they're just a huge inconvenience. Also, wearing clothes that don't fit you well, and at the same time wearing way too big shirts. On attractive people, it looks like a fashion statement. I mean, anything can be a fashion statement in attractive people. And fashion is wholly decided by attractive people. Even plus-size fashion only looks good on the plus-size people with the right proportions. Story 10. Here's what I think. Those nice dresses that are practically open in the front to see full-on chesties. Had a friend post pictures of herself in one and she looked like a goddess. If I wore that, I'd look like a trailer park girl. A 4-day beard. If you're a male model, you look like a manly man. If you're Bubba Six-Pack, you look like a homeless dude. Any kind of bold makeup. Red lip or heavy bronzer, bright eyeshadow, etc. I mean, heavy makeup can look good on a conventionally unattractive person if they have the skill to make it look good. Then you don't notice that they're unattractive. I do a lot of beauty photography, and while super dramatic makeup might look really good on models, you put that crap on me and I'll look like a drag queen clown. It's super fun to do creative makeup, but I just try to enjoy it on other people. Being an alcoholic. Classy drinking, alluring drinking, not this trailer park crap. This also comes down to wealth. It looks classy to open a nice crystal decanter and pour a glass of expensive brandy at 2 in the afternoon. Cracking open a PBR at that time is trashy looking. Story 11. Cosplay. On a small con, a friend and I met a couple of girls cosplaying as Callie and Marie from Splatoon. Long story short, my friend wanted to get with Marie, but ended up with Callie, who's a really nice girl but not as pretty though. After that, his brother kept teasing him about it the next time he'll introduce Squidwardette to their parents. Sadly, if you're not good looking, cosplaying is like putting yourself a target for burns and jokes, unless you go for the armor or just doing something silly. So I'm normally a 3 out of 10 if I'm being generous, but I really wanted to cosplay at my local con. I had previously bought a Guy Fawkes mask, and since I stayed with women, there were some wigs here and there, so I decided to go as V from V for Vendetta. I thought the costume was bad at the time I got it done. But when I go to the con, I was bombarded by picture requests and handshakes. It was like a window into the good life of an attractive person. My friend and I went to a big con again in my area that had all levels of cosplay. He chose to cosplay as the 11th Doctor because he's a white nerd. It's easy to pull off because he just wears clothes and a recognizable variety of hats. He was getting a fair amount of attention because he bears a very passing resemblance to the actor, in as much as he's a white guy with short hair and a longish neck. You feel bad for some of the cosplayers who had put way more effort into their costumes but weren't getting as much attention, either because they were more obscure characters or that, despite the effort, their costumes just didn't come out well. Or maybe they didn't have the right body type or they weren't the most attractive. We were standing in line at one point, hoping the food cart still had a few greasy dogs for us to get a nibble of, and there was a guy in the line just a few spots ahead of us who was dressed as the 10th Doctor. He was a bit broad-shouldered and heavy-set for the role, round-faced enough that you might have had to do a double-take to think of who he was playing. While we were in line, we had 3 different people chat us up and ask for pictures with him, which he was happy to do. I thought about it after a minute and felt bad for the dude just ahead of us. He put more effort into his costume, you could tell. Had everything down to the 2 long laces and red Converse. He was mostly in character too, while my friend decidedly wasn't. We struck up a conversation with him and decided, you know what? My friend will get a picture with him, and the next person who comes up to us, I'll see if they want to get a picture of them together. But he said he wasn't there for the attention really, but because he just loved it. Not to say we were there solely for attention, but I found it the most rewarding part. The rest of the con, I kind of made it a point to talk to the people that I thought put a noticeable amount of effort into their stuff, even if it wasn't quite right. Maybe it came across as patronizing and maybe I was doing it for the wrong reasons. Who knows? But we really enjoyed our time there and the talks we had. The world is superficial. Whether we like it or not, it has been the truth and will always be the truth. Story 12. An accent from anywhere in America. If you're good looking, it's alluring or sweet. If you're rich, it makes you seem genuine. If you're broke and or unfortunate looking, you're just a dumb hick and the accent is proof. A little clarification. Yes, I'm from Ohio, and no, I don't mean just southern accents. I live and grew up in the dead center of Ohio where accents literally come to pass, so I'm sensitive to them all. From the up north states and the nasally almost Canadian accent to the northeastern, also nasal accent with their allergy to the letter R, to California's laid-back enunciated drawl. And yes, the slow southern drawls. The above applies. My grandparents are from West Virginia and I love hearing their accents. Hearing them discuss washing, the car and changing the Earl is like grilled cheese and tomato. Soup for my ears. Accents fare pretty well in Ohio bars. You become an instant object of fascination. If you're attractive, you're exotic and true to your roots. If you're ugly, you need to go back to your country or learn English because America. And lastly, pretty much anything you do, to be honest. People joke, but this is honestly what it boils down to. Also, a lot of things people define as cringy could be suave or funny if you look more like Chris Evans and less like a chewed Muppet. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're gonna love this. Catch you in that video.